thus far. Our last and final panel discussion will take place lasting an hour.
So, in this panel discussion, please welcome on stage our panelists, Mr. Jeff Dean, Ms. Wendy Nguyen, Mr. Stephen Truong, Mr. Christopher Nguyen, and Jimmy Hải-Trần, Poshan Blow from Carnegie Mellon University. And our session is moderated by Ms. Vu Vân, CEO of ELSA.
Please help me welcome our speakers onto the stage.
All right, guys, this is it. This is the last panel talk for today. I know it's been a very long day, but hopefully you guys are having fun and at least learn something new today. I definitely do. So earlier today in the panel in the morning, Dr. Quoc Le said that Vietnam should definitely get into this AI revolution. We should not be left out. And I really love that spirit. And this is exactly what we are here this afternoon to talk about. So welcome everybody. You're definitely in for a treat today as we're featuring a panel full of the panelists that are amazing leaders in their field. But not only just the leaders, they also truly innovators that are working on multiple things that really changing lives. So let's give a warm welcome to our panelists. And I will give a quick introduction of the panelists and then we'll jump right into the questions. So we have Jeff, no introduction needed anymore, but I'll share a quick summary of Jeff here that I actually borrowed from our other panelist, Christopher, that he shared with me. So Jeff was instrumental in every generation of engineering technology for Google. MapReduce, which helped Google win the search wars with the biggest index in the world. Protobuf, which helped Google win in the network efficiency. Bigtable, which enabled infinite visioning in Google Docs and spreadsheets. Spender, which breaks the laws of physics in global distributed data cap theory. And of course, TensorFlow and Google's latest advances in AI. No other single person has spanned this history of influence. Thank you, Jeff, for your legacy work. Next to Jeff, we have Ms. Wendy Nguyen, co-founder of Rethink Healthcare Foundation, an organization dedicated to creating solutions for new healthcare ecosystem. She's also a founding member of Stanford Biosecurity and Pandemic Preparedness, focusing on combating infectious disease. She holds a master's degree in business management from Stanford GSB. We have Stephen Truong. He's innovative leader at Winbrand, where he was also had the nickname Captain America of the work. After 36 years living in North America and nearly 13 years at Microsoft R&D USA and R&D China, Stephen has a purpose of doing something with more humanity, building AI for saving lives and building something cool, super cool for Vietnam. And in his own words, anything in the past is just the past. The important is what I could contribute now and the future. We have Jimmy Tran, currently serves as CEO and chairman of Galaxy Holdings. Prior to this, he was the CEO of B Group that many people here in Vietnam are familiar with, among many other leadership positions. Jimmy also co-founded VNG Corporation, where he served as a CTO. He earned a Bachelor in Computer Information Science from UC Irvine. Welcome, Jimmy. And we have Poshan Lo. I think you all heard his amazing talk. He's a mathematician, a professor at math at CMU, as well as the coach for the Math US Olympiad team. He's the one that put US back on the map for math. Thank you, Chef Paul. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Christopher Nguyen. He's the CEO of Itomatic, pioneering domain-specific AI agent with partners like Samsung and TSMC. Sitting on the AI Alliance Steering Committee with IBM and Meta, he oversees foundation models. In Google's early years, he led Gmail, one of Jeff Dean's biggest infrastructure customers, and later became global industrial AI leader at Panasonic. As a professor at HKUST, he established Vietnam's first internet connection in 1997 and developed Vietnamese in Unicode encoding in 1992. He holds degrees from UC Berkeley and Stanford in semiconductor technologies. Welcome everybody to the panel. All right, so let me jump right into it. I'll start with you, Jeff. So earlier today in the panel, the morning, you said that it's very critical for us to figure it out how we can apply AI to problems that matter in Vietnam, education, healthcare, or other issues that are useful for society. So how do you see the global landscape in generative AI evolving that Vietnam should be aware of? And where do you think Vietnam can play a specific role in this AI ecosystem? Is that primarily in the application layers, like you just mentioned, or we should also play a role in the infrastructure or foundation model layer in this system?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. I feel like it's a very large country with a large population, so you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into just one of the things, application layer or infrastructure layer or research. I think you have the opportunity to actually work in many of those different sectors and areas. I do think some of the presentations in the afternoon session actually have identified some interesting areas where there may be sort of comparative advantage for Vietnam to sort of focus on in terms of generative AI applications where you're particularly strong or well-suited. And that seems like a pretty interesting place to start, thinking about what might make sense. But I'm sure the other panelists also have ideas.
Christopher, maybe that's a question for you as well. So you work with a lot of global AI alliance and work with different countries. How would you assess Vietnam's current position in the global GenAI system? In what areas do you think Vietnam can leverage its unique strength in order for us to win this AI race?
Well, to use Jeff's term, comparative advantage, right? You think about economic development or technology development, you think of, let's say Singapore at one end is a city economy, and then you got China at the other end, and in that continuum, Vietnam is somewhere in between. And you notice what works for Singapore does not work for China and the other way around. So Vietnam has to find its way. But I think one of the key things, we tend to just focus on the headlines that come out of countries like America and say, well, how much of that can we do? And forget that there are comparative advantages. For example, in the industrial economy, the physical economy, Vietnam is still manufacturing, making things. And the next wave of adoption or advantages in AI is actually, I strongly believe, is domain-specific AI. And differentiation at that layer comes from the expertise of the people that work on the technology, whether it's semiconductor, manufacturing, avionics, automotive, and so on. So I think Vietnam actually is better positioned than the US in those areas to take advantage of AI, right? And the second thing that I would think about is some of the speakers have actually spoken to this. There's a lot of thinking about the supply side of the equation, meaning producing, for example, 50,000 IC designers, which is great. But there's also thinking that there needs to be thinking about on the demand side as well. I don't know whether the audience knows which country today is the most aggressive by some measures in adopting generative AI. Do you know? Not even close. It's China, right? As by some surveys, 86% of business respondents say that they are adopting generative AI in some shape or form, whereas it's about 65% for the US. I don't know what the number is for Vietnam, but I think looking at the supply side as well as the demand side is very, very key. When you have a lot of supply, whether it's software engineers or AI engineers or IC designers, you have to ask the question, are they going to be doing outsourcing stuff, or are they going to reach directly as, to the global market? I think there needs to be a lot more investment in, certainly it's good to be employees of multinationals and so on, but if there's a connection directly to the global market, because he who controls the customer controls the chessboard.
Thank you. And Stephen, so what Christopher said is that we also have opportunities in IC manufacturing. I know Vinbrain is already leading charge in the healthcare revolution. What is your next big dream for Vietnam? And what do you think are the promising areas of growth for Vietnam AI ecosystem?
So I think that one of the key value of Vietnam is still 100 million people. So I think human is the most intelligent in the planet. So Vietnam owns 100 million people in a way. So I feel that Vietnam have a lot of opportunity to grow, especially we have been involved. And, like the situation here is the technology getting, open and flat with the open source and all of the other. So my dream is after the, like the Vinbrain, I think the next wave is about how we can stimulate and build a platform. And the platform can be used not only for Vietnam, not only for, like Southeast Asia, but also the world. So we're getting, my dream is about AI factory. How we can make the AI democratization into the world and contribute it to the ecosystem of the world. And I think that like, how can Vietnam doing that? Vietnam have a very unique situation. We have about 5.5 million people living overseas. Christopher living overseas, Thức living overseas, Thắng and Quoc and me, and now I came back here. So we have a lot of intelligent, or maybe at least, not me, but all the other people, they will be a great resource for Vietnam to grow. And the talent pool in Vietnam is young and getting into the level of, like higher quality. So I came back for Vietnam. I can tell you when I build China R&D, okay, I say like Microsoft in China is about 9 point. Just don't quote me for this, but like say US 10. Then Vietnam, when I came here, the talent pool is around 6.5. Now it's went up to 7.5. So after like few years, I noticed the trend moving up. So I encourage that not only the Vietnam within here, it can do like, getting into the platform. Because why? Because Vietnam can be evolved. Because I look at the China in around like late 19, early 2000. Microsoft is the one really created China, technology. Because if you look at most of the leadership in Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, they all actually, most of them came from Microsoft. So I hope that Vietnam will get some big corporate come to Vietnam, and then we have the good people from the world and from the Vietnamese living overseas come to Vietnam and stimulate that. And someday in the future, maybe 10 years, we will have a lot of people came from that and really creating the technology for Vietnam. So that is my dream. It's the next thing is the wave of how to really stimulate the economy of Vietnam so that we can go 10x. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy, we're very lucky to have you as representative from a lot of big companies that you have worked for in Vietnam and helped lead. What do you see as the opportunities for investment in AI startups and initiatives within Vietnam? And in particular, how is Sovico Group involved in this space?
So AI is always part of our business operation in Sovico. Right? We have anything from revenue management to fuels, calculations, how to optimize our flights, credit scoring, all of that. So, but I guess for the past 2 or 3 years, as we all see, the big wave of GenAI. It's just game changing. So for us right now, from Galaxy Holding, we really focus on I think our task is to digital transformation of our group. And part of it, one of the key things that we do transformation, actually we start applying a lot of AIs, especially GenAI. We start moving away from simple dashboard report or something that interactive with AI, with bots. So those are the things that we applying within our group. We also, as a conglomerate, we look into the opportunities, and I agree with everyone who's saying here is like there's a good opportunity for Vietnam. And it's not only just any particular areas, it could be some supply side, could be some demand side, because we are a big market with 100 million people. One of the areas that I think the group is really, really focused on right now is like, with our strength as a group, how do we involve and enable this AI? Because as you probably know, AI is computation, AI all related to latencies, all the costs, electricity, how to do it. So this is what we're looking at, right? Hopefully, we're looking at the opportunity of build infrastructure for AI here in Vietnam, and that's what we are planning to do. Probably, hopefully, we can announce something in the near future.
Thank you. We look forward to that. So let's switch gear a little bit as we talk about overall opportunities for Vietnam. But we also have industry experts here in different verticals: healthcare, education, semiconductor. So I think let's start with Wendy, which is AI in healthcare. So how do you think generative AI can be leveraged to address all of the healthcare challenges that we are having in Vietnam right now?
Yeah. So I think doctors in Vietnam loves the handwriting, although their handwriting, they can't even read it on their own. It sounds like a funny story, right? But it's true. And I think that they have to deal with a lot of pressure, from the system because, a couple years ago, I asked one of my friends who's a doctor, like how many patients, you have to see in a day? And she said 100 patients, right? And so I just recently talked to her again this year, and I was like, so how's it going? Like how many patients you see in a day? And she's like, now it's like close to 180. And I was like, how is that possible, right? So a lot of patients in rural areas, whether they have small or big problems, they go to the big cities to see the doctors. And that put a lot of pressure on the doctors. And since doctors in Vietnam loves handwriting, right? And now I know that we have, electrical medical records, but still, if you go see a lot of hospitals in Vietnam, you still see the habits of having a stack of papers. And that's when generative AI can come in to help to improve, right, diagnosis and take the pressure off the doctors so they can basically, improve their skills for expertise. So like doctors in Vietnam, if you throw them into, during like COVID, right, doctors in Vietnam, they're very active because they're used to it. They're like, oh, this is normal. But for doctors in the US, normally you see like 10, 20 patients a day because they want to control the quality of care, right? So we see the big difference. And when COVID happened, it's a wake-up call. It's really a wake-up call for the healthcare system. And that's when, the healthcare regulators and even doctors are forced to adopt technology, right? And now it's growing of the AI, it's definitely an opportunity, and especially for countries like Vietnam.
Thank you, Wendy. Just to build up on that, Stephen, you work in healthcare as well. I know healthcare is a tough problem to crack, especially for developing countries. How much do you think Vietnam is ready to apply AI into healthcare? Or what could be the enablers to make sure that we are ready for it?
I think they build a good AI starting with a lot of data, big data, and clean data. So I think with generative AI, and the reason that I go back to Vietnam to build the AI for healthcare is really, first, it's a 100 million people country. They have a lot of problem about healthcare because it's a big population. So it's good sandbox for us to do something meaningful. beside the humanity that's serving the country. So I feel that big data is available. Early validation in the pipeline of AI is available in Vietnam. I think like Wendy is saying that, access to the doctor in Vietnam is probably 10x, 10 times easier than access to the doctor in the US. So that gives you a lot of, opportunity to create some good product. Because if you want to make a good AI product, you must have usage. And the usage in here very open. So that's a big data usage. And then now next is talking about computing power. I think now the technology and flat, we can access to the computing power. And we have the last thing is talent. So how we can attract the talent from the US, from Vietnam, and on the talent pool can come will make a big difference. Now we talk about the data in the healthcare. One of the things like Jeff referred this morning is about multimodality. Healthcare is the biggest data set and also the most complex data set because it has so many data when we approaching it, like radiology, pathology, doctor notes, and also like imaging, right? And also like text. So what really generative AI bring into the equation is about how you can access to modality, multimodality model, so that you can really break through in, accuracy, in quality. If you ask me, come back and build like a search engine, no. Because no way I can compete with Google. But if you talk about healthcare, Vietnam has a great opportunity because name me a company that's dominant in healthcare in the world. I couldn't name anyone. But if you name, like say, software, enterprise, well, Microsoft always dominant. If you name CIM, you have Salesforce. So Vietnam have a great opportunity, a good platform to break through. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, what do you think about it? I know Quirk earlier today said that his dream is to build a vaccine for all of the cancer, and know we are a little bit further away from it, but what have you seen in GenAI for healthcare system in the US, or anything Vietnam can learn from or advance even before the US?
Yeah, I think the opportunity really is somewhat similar in many different countries for healthcare. If you think about the problem of treating patients, it's about bringing all the different modalities of data together and then essentially taking what has happened and trying to predict what will happen in the future if you sort of treat a patient this way or give them this sort of treatment or do this sort of protocol on them, and then having enough data in order to sort of view those as trajectories for similar kinds of conditions that other people have experienced and learning from that data so that you can then apply it to new patients. And that seems to be kind of a universal aspect of healthcare. One of the things that the whole generative AI sort of revolution has been very good at is building models that can predict sequences, right? Like if you think of language, that's a sequence. If you think about healthcare related problems, health is also a sequence. And I think modeling them in the similar way is actually going to be a pretty effective tool at how do you build great, awesome things that can help clinicians make the right decisions, that can help patients better understand their own health setting, health situation, and bringing even more modalities of data to bear on the health problems is going to be really important. Like my heart rate monitoring watch should be in there. Genomic data should be in there if it's available. The air quality where a person lives every day should be in there. And many other kinds of environmental factors, or the diet that a person has should be in there, and often isn't in a very detailed way. So, that's what I view as like a huge opportunity to sort of really revolutionize healthcare, is to get more kinds of information into decision making. And then I think there's opportunities at the low level development of new pharmaceutical through protein folding, but then that's not exactly patient of care time work, that's earlier sort of stage research work.
Thank you. Paul, let's talk education. It's my favorite subject, of course. So what kind of genius idea you have for education system in Vietnam? I know you crack your code with your math teaching. for the U.S. What can you share with us about what can Vietnam do to really transform and revolutionize our education system?
Yeah, well, when I look at the education, really, I think education is powerful because that's how civilization reproduces. The civilizational values reproduce through education. And so, actually, when I look at any education system, yes, you talked about math, but I think that the much more fundamental thing that needs to be promoted is how to make it so that all the people actually want to help all the other people. You see, I talked about math education, but for me, math is just a Trojan horse. What that means is I'm using the math simply because everyone needs to learn it. But what I'm really trying to teach everyone is people are great. And I'm doing this because I think that I heard about what's the future of these different countries. You mentioned 100 million people. Well, when I think about this, the world's going to become very, very complicated. Even if you have 100 million people, if there's another country which has 10 million people and nuclear fusion reactors and a bazillion semiconductors, they will have more output than your 100 million people. So the 100 million people is not the relevant number. In some sense, even the natural resources are not the relevant number once nuclear fusion is unlocked. And if there's no fusion, there might be fission. Effectively, when you think about geopolitics, in some sense, the countries that are going to be the happiest are going to be the ones where the people actually want to help each other. So this is actually what I look at. That's why I operate actually not only in the US, the things that I do operate worldwide. For example, I'd love to have Vietnamese people join our system. We have people from all over the world. And I'm also doing this because I think the splitting by country is only increasing the instability of the world. So actually, one of the objectives I have of the system I built is to intentionally connect young people together from different countries while they're young and have them make friends so that when they become older and powerful, their friends are from all over the world. So this might not be exactly the answer you were thinking of, but what I'm actually after here is, I think that the most productive outcome is how to make it so that all the people from here start connecting with all the people from everywhere else, make everyone else love them, and also somehow build a robust ecosystem in here so that people actually want to help each other, or else you're going to have major internal struggles. This is actually what I anticipate happening. As the AI becomes ubiquitous, any country which is not able to have people take care of each other will start spending enormous amounts of their resources figuring out how to make their people happy. So this is not math education. It's more of how to build a society.
Just a side question from there. I know you talk about human, and Tang in his talk about superhuman. Who do you think is going to win in this race? Human or superhuman? That's for you.
So I actually already, you guys' AI is better at math than I am for Math Olympiad problems, okay? So the thing about the superhuman, in some sense, narrow superhuman is already here, okay? So that's actually why my attitude now is how to, as quickly as possible, make people want to help people. Because in the time of the superhuman, you need to have the humans team up. I also want to emphasize, I'm not anti-AI. I think it's very natural. And I think it's great to have all these AI tools. The only question is, can we make it so that people want to use the tools to help other people, instead of some people want to use the tools to beat other people?
Thank you. Jimmy, as Galaxy Holdings is part of the Sofico Group, which is a big player in multiple industry here. We have real estate, transportation, banking, and so on and so forth, right? So how is Sofico Group right now integrating generative AI into the overall business strategy, and what kind of impact do you see on a bigger Vietnam economy?
Right. Again, like I said, I mean, AI has always been part of our organizations. But with the Gen AI, obviously now, I guess every single KPI that we have in the group, there's certain component of AI's implementations there, right? So I definitely going to see huge impacts on the workforce and stuff. I always have this joke with my staff. It's like, you better go get ChatGPT to be your assistant because it's only $20 a month, because it's a lot cheaper than an average workforce. So we actually start bringing a lot of training of AI to our staff, because we cannot live without it these days, right? I mean, it's a tool that you need to use. But we don't see it as a threat in a sense of like might lose people's job, but we actually, if we adopt this early, that could be our competitive advantage that can make us, like understand and do things faster and more accurately. So I would say that we're embracing it as a group point of view, and again, we committed to invest heavily in the space, especially on the infrastructure side. In terms of Vietnam, I think it's a good opportunity. It's same analogies is that once I think Vietnamese are quite, smart and on build and be creative on build things. Now with the power of AI behind it, I think that can really help to accelerate that kind of creativities and make us even more competitive in the workforce market.
Thank you. And Christopher, can you comment about the semiconductor industry and the power of AI here? I know semiconductor is one of the 2 key initiatives that the government is pushing for investment in Vietnam in addition to AI.
Maybe I'll speak about it in the, following what Pushen said. You may wonder what the connection is. Let me share with you a story about semiconductor and ecosystem. I think of what you said as ecosystem. I got to give you a little background. This is live happening. So as you may know, NVIDIA is trying to dominate not through the chips but through ecosystems. CUDA, is the initial ecosystem, but Jensen is very much about building up those vertical software walls, if you will. So they actually have teams that they introduced themselves to me as temperature sensors, right? Like they have to go around and figure out, detect what's going on, how are people using AI, and sort of capture that very early on. So that's sort of one context. The other context is the AI Alliance. Some of you may be familiar with that. This is a global organization that Itomatic, my company, and I co-founded together with IBM, Meta, and we're all about advancing the cause of open science and open development. So I lead the foundation models working group in that alliance. One of the projects that we output, and we announced this, you can look this up, maybe search Google for Venture Beat Semi-Kong, like King Kong, Semi-Kong. So we just announced this in July, and there was a project where we pulled in Tokyo Electron in Japan, which some of you may know as a competitor to Applied Materials. They make the machines that make semiconductors. And then for another partner, we pulled in FPT AI Center. So when we announced Semicon at Semicon West in San Francisco, I hear from the NVIDIA that Jensen Huang was pissed off. He was pissed off not because of the model, but that his team didn't know about this coming in advance. But they said that they were saved because they were able to connect through the AI Alliance to FPT Vietnam, which does have a relationship with NVIDIA. So the point is, if you do something meaningful, it's actually not that unimaginable that Vietnam is actually at the bleeding edge to get Jensen Huang pissed off. But it only happens because of this connectivity. I think of this conference itself as sort of connecting the Vietnam AI, generative AI ecosystem with that of the world, right? We are organizing together with, I guess we're organizing an AI semiconductor conference next March 2025. And the entire mission of that conference is not to do yet another conference, but to do at a very high level, operational level leadership, right, between the global ecosystem, companies like TSMC, Samsung, MediaTek, Tokyo Electron, you name it, together with the ecosystem here. And that's the goal. And I think, coming back to your point about connecting people, in this case it's connecting technology people, I think can be very multiplicative in terms of helping an economy like Vietnam leapfrog, where it is, and say there's 100 million people, median age, I think 32, right? Highly oriented toward education, and so if there's a focused effort towards say, okay, let's put a lot into IC design education, I think within 5 years, Vietnam can be a leader. How about edge computing, tiny ML, right, which also came out of Google, right? Yeah, I think focused effort together with this ecosystem connection can be quite exponential in growth.
Thank you. So what I hear is a lot of opportunities and potential for Vietnam, which is very promising. But I would just love to hear a little bit more about the challenges. So maybe first for Jeff, what are some of the common challenges you see faced by emerging AI markets? And how can Vietnam overcome those challenges so that we can establish ourselves as a key player in this genre of AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think one challenge that companies and organizations all around the world are facing is there's a huge amount of potential for applying AI to solve real problems in the world. But often the education system is not producing people yet with like deep AI skills, because this is a relatively new technology that is, at least applicable to so many things. I think there's been a small AI research community, but now that's sort of blossomed into something that is now touching lots and lots of different industries and sectors. And I think you want to really focus on how do you get people who are already in the workforce trained, to Jimmy's point about how people can use AI to solve problems in their everyday job, but also encourage students who are studying not just computer science but other fields of endeavor to learn about AI and how it can be applied to physics or to literature or to law. And I think these kinds of things take a bit of time to develop and are not sort of unique to sort of developing or lower middle income country markets. They're a problem faced worldwide is how do you get people up to speed on using AI to solve real problems. And the more faster you can do that, the better it is.
Christopher, maybe back to you. Just given your involvement in the global AI, alliance, what do you see as successful case study from other countries that have really getting ahead of the genre of AI that we can learn from, outside of China maybe?
Well, I was going to cite China. Adoption is key. But someone actually mentioned Japan. I think Japan is also a pretty successful case. It turns out the AI Alliance, even though we started out as companies that are mostly digital, right? IBM, Meta, and the ecosystem in the US tend to be mostly digital. The membership quickly grew to include companies like Panasonic, Hitachi, Mitsubishi. If you look at the list, there's a strong representation from what I call the industrial world from Japan. And I think there's a fundamental reason for that. Well, there are two. One is that Japan economy is doing very well right now, thanks to the weak yen and also thanks to the geopolitics. But also, I think I alluded to earlier, there's a real opportunity for the physical world. It's almost like if you think the digital versus physical divide has been such that it favors machine learning and data adoption for the digital world, right? Like Google was born digital, all the data processed. So it's been if you take advantage of technology a lot, we tend to think of the physical world as slow and maybe even dumb, but it's actually not true. So I realized that when Panasonic bought my previous company. And I said, well, there's a lot of smart people working here. It's just they're working on much harder problems, right? When I make a mistake at Google, people click on the wrong ad. When I make a mistake at Panasonic, somebody dies. But I think generative AI, because of its translational capability, that is, for the first time, we have machines that can understand us, as opposed to us having to work very hard to translate our ideas into code. And because of that, the industrial world will, in my prediction, or my estimation, benefit disproportionately to the digital world. And so I think that's a very long way to describe why I think the example of Japan is quite analogous or quite applicable to economies like Vietnam, like China, right? Places where people are still making things. In the US, we're now struggling to try to make things again. That's another story. So I think I'm very optimistic, quite apart from all the statistics with respect to demographics and so on, I think the economy of Vietnam, there are elements, the physical aspect that can be quite transformed, even disproportionately so compared to the digital component of it.
Thank you. So to make all of this AI dream a reality, we need talents, we need people. Reskilling, upskilling, new skilling are some of the keywords these days that run across the world, right? So maybe with Paul, so as part of NTI, which is the organization that Thang, Thuc, and I co-founded to really bring AI training to Vietnam and Southeast Asia, what do you think we can do to really multiply these AI trainers to make sure that we produce a lot more AI talents in order for us to then address all of these and take on all of these dreams and opportunities that lie ahead of us?
I usually look at the motivation of the young people. What do the young people spend all their time doing?
Watching show on the
Is it
screen?
TikTok? Is it? So what I mean is, that's why I put this slide up here about delight in helping other people delight. I've thought a lot about this because I have children also. If a person only wants to delight themselves, it's very easy. You scroll TikTok all day. If you get the value that you want to delight other people, you scroll TikTok for 5 minutes and you say, I want to do something else. But I'm saying this because actually what's going on, I see this worldwide, the kids are comfortable. They're actually comfortable. Maybe at some point, depending on your age, you may have grown up through a time that was less comfortable. And that might have given you somehow a lot of motivation to do something. But to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of people whose lives they feel are pretty comfortable. And if the kid is thinking, why do I need to do all this study? What's a job anyway? They don't have any idea what the job is. So if their reward mechanism is purely, as long as I'm happy, I'm done, then all you get is lots of conflicts between parents and kids where parents say, go study AI, it will be good for you. And kids says, okay, and then scroll some more TikTok. Which is funnily enough using AI to make sure they don't do AI. But that's, right? I mean, that's basically what TikTok is. It's an AI algorithm to make sure you spend more time on TikTok and less time learning. But I'm saying all of this because what I work on is the motivation. So that's why if you saw what we do, we said, okay, let's make the math class look as exciting as your TikTok. Okay, but you don't have to only do that way. Even more powerful is if somehow parents can influence this. But you see, I actually will say that could be something that could be a challenge that, it'll be a challenge to overcome here. I believe there's a difference, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you should correct me, I believe there's a difference between US university admission and Vietnamese university admission. Am I correct that in Vietnam, it's mostly based on a score?
It's an admission test.
It's an admission test. United States is based on a combination of tests. It's a combination of tests, as well as also checking, does this person have other objectives in the world? I think that's actually really important. In China, I make the same comment. I don't know Vietnam as well, but in China, definitely it's a test. And what I explain is, if you're telling the entire population, your score on a test is the only thing that matters, and whether you want to help anyone or have any bigger dream doesn't matter at all, just score the test, you train an entire generation of robots. So actually, I'm actually serious. It's like, what does it take to be an AI pioneer? It takes passion. You have to actually think it's cool to help heal people. You have to want to do that. And to do that, you have to have some dream which is bigger than just getting your parents to stop yelling at you. Again, I have 3 kids, okay? So I see all of this. So that's actually where I'd say, I actually think that university admission systems, if they can start trying to take into account other aspects, that will have a very powerful driving force that will change a lot of things. But I just suggested a very big policy change. So this will, of course, need much more. You guys have to discuss and figure all of this stuff out. But I will say, I think that's one of the strengths of the US college admission system, which is called no one has a clue how to get into college, not even the admission officer.
I want to say that was one big ad for Fulbright University, Vietnam.
Thank you. Wendy, you founded Rethink Healthcare Foundation to also with a mission, as I know you aspire to really bring a lot of training to doctors here so that they can really go on and do important work to save lives. Can you talk more about what education and upskilling and reskilling that the doctors would need in order for them to apply AI meaningfully.
So I think Poe and I here are the two people who focus on human, and we really need training, fast. And I think AI, can help us to move forward fast, because 2021, if you guys all remember, we hit COVID. 10 millions of people died. And look at the healthcare system around the world, really disconnected, right? Now, look back, 1918, Spanish flu. We're overdue for another pandemic in the flu, and we have not had a solution for vaccines. Now, I want to focus on making people stronger, healthier, by using technology. And 8 years ago, I was a big fan in AI. I even talked to my CEO about it, read the information, and that's how I met Thang. And now I have a free AI advisor. No paying, too expensive. So I'm saying that, think about the healthcare industry will be the most, impactful area that AI can improve. You can see AI can improve finance, right? Laws, right? A lot of other industries. And that's why we really need training in AI. And that's why I'm here, and that's why, I coordinate with NTI, and after this, I really want to push forward to it. Not only training for the doctors, but the leaders, right? The decision maker who understand AI and who's not afraid of AI. And we need to move fast, because I can tell you, okay, from the statistic of the Stanford Virus Biosecurity, we are overdue for a big pandemic. Sorry for
Another
the
one.
quietness. Everyone's scared here. But that's just the importance of bringing technology, and with the booming of AI, we really need training in this field.
Thank you. I'll wrap with one last question for Jeff, and then we'll open up for 2 questions from the audience, and then we wrap for the day. So Jeff, in one of the comments you said earlier in the morning that Vietnam has a lot of smart, talented students, especially in math and science. And that's why we produce Quoc and Thang and a lot of talents. So my question for you is, how do we replicate to 1,000 or more of those Thang and Quoc for Vietnam? Or apart from changing the admission system, university admission system like Paul mentioned, what are other steps that Vietnam can take to build a strong foundation for AI talents?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm actually pretty intrigued with the model that Poshen presented for how to get sort of very strong math students to then educate middle schoolers, because that seems like a replicatable, scalable way to deliver, lessons of important topics like AI development or, theoretical advances in AI to more and more people. That I think, one of the ways that is an impediment to teaching AI skills is there often aren't enough people who are qualified to be teachers. But I think if you think creatively, as Poshen has for mathematics, you could actually find really good people who maybe are younger in their careers but have great teaching skills and are actually able to convey topics to other people. And you probably do that. And my dad, when he was in medical school, said the best way to learn things is see one, do one, teach one. This was applied to surgeries. But I think you could actually do similar things to get AI talent more widespread pretty quickly.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, the panels. I think we're going to open it up for 2 questions from the audience, if anybody has a question. I think we have one on this side. If somebody can pass the mic.
Yeah, this is a little bit philosophical. I have a question for Professor Low, because like you say, you want to make people want to help others, but like in your program, I feel like it's not really people will become like selfless or altruistic, but instead they say they teach at your classes. Maybe just in order to get into Harvard or MIT or Stanford. So how do you explain that? Because like in game theory, you have objective function. Every player has their own objective function. But the thing, I think what you do is like to twist their objective function to include a component like to help other people. So how do you explain that? Thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to explain. So the first thing is it turns out that those universities' admission procedures are looking for that anyway. So I didn't make that up. It turns out that a lot of these famous US universities are looking for people who actually want to help other people. It just happens to be that many parents don't notice that, and they're just trying to do the exam scores. And then what we do is we say, okay, well, we also care about that. And then when we are selecting, so we select for the high schoolers who want to join this program, we actually are also using a similar filter. In that sense, the fact that our students are getting into the top universities, part of it is also because we are basically doing the university's job for them. However, what this is doing, though, is it's making it even more obvious to the young people that this delighting other people is valuable. Now, the great thing about delighting other people is once you start delighting other people, it is addictive. So the thing about this is that some kids may not have experienced really delighting other people if they spent too much of their time just trying to win and beat and play individually. But actually, it's fun to delight other people. So I'm not even fooling anyone. We're just simply finding out who already has this, then we give them a push, advance, okay? Then it makes the other people say, maybe I need to try that. But the hope is as they try that, they also decide, this is fun. It's the game theory part is, you're right, it has to be helping their objective function. But it just so turns out that maybe due to evolution, human beings helping other people makes us feel good. If you think about it, how did human beings even survive? We're not the fastest, we're not the strongest, we don't have the biggest teeth, we work together. But it just turns out that some people's, this helping of other people got forgotten due to the complexity of competing in a very difficult world. So in that sense, yes, what I'm doing is still making people delight themselves, except I'm making it so that they discover that by delighting other people, they've discovered that they delight. Sorry, by delighting other people, they feel happy. That's what this is about. Thank you.
I think we have time for one last question. I see a hand over there. If anybody can help pass the mic. You can keep your hand up so they can see you guys.
Hello, I'm a medical doctor, so I have some question about how you get a medical AI application in Vietnam, because first you need to get access to Vietnamese data, and there's actually no regulation that allow you to get access to hospital data. And now once that you get that data, it's actually in handwriting form. And because I'm a doctor, I know that doctor's handwriting is impossible to be interpreted by anyone except by themselves or their assistant or their colleague. No one else can interpret that. So how are you going to build Vietnamese AI, medical AI?
Feel free to take it.
I'll take this question. So, well, it's a challenge. It's always a challenge, access into medical field. And building AI for healthcare is, I myself feel that's one of the most challenges, okay? So to answer your question, that when we access into the data, first thing I think like we have to follow the regulation and make sure we sign the compliant GDPR and all of the standard ways. So you approach the problem by standard. I think that's a fundamental for engineer. And then when you assess to it, you know that data is not follow the standard. So how can you do that? So luckily we have generative AI. We also, luckily we have, like medical devices, like medical imaging devices that have a DICOM file, which is very standard in anywhere in the world. So we follow that standard file. So that's why Wing Brain, we choose, like radiology first, because at least we have a standard. You heard the word like rubbish in, rubbish out, right? So we follow to approach the problem that's doable and achievable. So we're starting with, DICOM file from the medical imaging devices. And then we build the AI on top of that. And then we make sure we have early validation. So when we do it, like I told my team, well, you do in the lab, you got like 90, but you have to subtract like 10 points, at least, when you go down to production. So we did have, like 5 hospitals validate with us, and then we keep tuning and, improving it. So now we talk about generative AI when we applied it. So I'm giving you a sample. Like we look at the data from one of the biggest hospitals in Vietnam. It has 5,000 visits per day. And what we did is we know that some of the data will follow a standard like ICD-10, which is one of the codes that you can link the data together. And then you know that most of the doctors enter the fee text. But that's what generative AI brings you the value of is it doesn't have to follow the rule, but it has a semantic understanding. The understanding of generative AI is the value to link the data together. And then you make sure that you don't have hallucination. When we generate a summarization, when we generate a comparison of medical notes, is you have to apply one of the breakthrough beside the reinforced learning with human in the loop is the GPT get successfully based on that breakthrough. It is a reinforced learning with human in the loop. And now the second part of the breakthrough of that is the data retrieval with augmentation, augmented data. So the data now become authorizable. So you base on that to make sure that no hallucination. Then you're achieving the quality of, you don't mix up, make up thing, then you can achieve that quality. So it is a revolution or an evolution. You're improving the data every day. It's a continuous improvement. And that's where you can achieve. So we start from the medical imaging, then we approach it from multimodality node, and then we also mimic the doctor of how they do diagnosis and treatment. They look at variety of data. So as a company of Wing Brain, we believe medical image is not good enough. We need more than that. So we put a higher problem. You aim high and you shoot for it. Then you will achieve something differentiation. So that's what we did. So it is a revolution. And then when we apply the concept of generating the report automatically based on generative AI, we actually setting a standard of medical report to become a standard input. So now the hospital will have the input and the output, and the output of general report become the input for standardization of medical report notes. Then, you build up the ecosystem, and then I think that's what we're doing.
Thank you so much. And on that note, that's a wrap for our panel discussion today. I definitely feel very inspired and optimistic about what we all can do to use AI to change lives and impact the world. Hopefully next year when we come back here, we see a lot more innovations coming out of Vietnam and can come back and share on stage. But thank you so much, the panelists, for joining us today, and congratulations on the summit.
Please remain on stage. We would like to invite Mr. Scott Fritzl on stage to give flowers to our panelists. We would also want to welcome on stage our organizers from RHF and NTI. And Chris Malone and all of the organizers, panelists, guest speakers, please join us on stage for the photo session. Xin mời tất cả các diễn giả của chúng ta đi lên. Xin mời tất cả các diễn giả đã tham gia chương trình của chúng tôi từ buổi sáng cho tới bây giờ. Tất cả những organizers, những guest speakers và panelists, chúng ta cùng lên trên sân khấu để chụp ảnh kỷ niệm sự kiện rất là đặc biệt ngày hôm nay ạ. That has wrapped up today's event. Thank you very much for being with us, and we hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chương trình của chúng tôi xin được kết thúc tại đây. Rất cảm ơn sự tham gia của quý vị từ sáng cho tới bây giờ. Kính chúc quý vị thật nhiều sức khỏe và hy vọng sẽ được gặp lại quý vị trong những lần sau. Goodbye for now.